Hello, everyone. I am Mary Chieffo. You may know me as Klingon Chancellor L'Rell on Star Trek Discovery, and also all around Star Trek geek and fan. And I am so thrilled to be here with the Nichelle Nichols Foundation and to be able to discuss why representation matters on and off screen. And I am just going to kick us right off in talking about how this is such an important topic to me because I'm here with this incredible group of women. They're intelligent, passionate leaders in their respective fields. And this topic is very near and dear to me because it's something I really witnessed during my time on Star Trek Discovery, led by the luminous and powerful Sonequa Martin Green. And I really learned how it was essential to have representation in front and behind the camera, not only to inspire our audiences, but to inspire and advance our storytelling. Because if we don't have a diverse perspective behind the scenes, we're not going to get a unique and exciting perspective on screen. So I'm really excited to dive into topics like that in this discussion, and also to illuminate, of course, that there's no greater example of representation on and off screen than Nichelle Nichols and her role as Uhura in the original Star Trek series, and how she inspired so many women, all of whom, not all of whom are here, but many of whom are here in this Zoom, and especially women of color, to pursue careers in STEM and STEAM, and how she spent her entire life and career lifting up others and celebrating the true Star Trek ideal of IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. So without further ado, we're going to kick into the discussion, and I'm honored to introduce Marion Smothers, who is Nichelle's sister and who runs the foundation, and she's going to say a few words.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you all of you ladies for being here this morning. It is such an honor for me to be able to do this, to be the face of the foundation as its president right now. Nichelle was such an inspiring person to you all, and to me as my older sister. She was just phenomenal from ever since I can remember as a kid. Her being in the bathtub in Chicago and she giving me my bath. I must have been 4 or 5 years old that I can remember something as early back as that. But she was just such a leader, an inspiring head of our family. When my mom died, of course, she became the matriarch and was just loved by everyone. Jasmin will speak some about the younger generation coming up. But I'm just so proud to be able to be here and meet you ladies and talk to you and spread the word about the foundation and Nichelle's dream to inspire future generations to the STEM and STEAM endeavors, you know. And so I'm just so pleased that you're all here, and thank you tremendously from my heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being such a beacon of love and intelligence and support. And it's really just such a thrill to be here with everyone. So now we get to meet everyone on this incredible panel. I've been geeking out over everyone as I've learned about many of them, one of whom I know quite well, but we'll find that out very shortly. But yeah, so we're going to kick it off fun, talking about, I'll give a short intro to each person's occupation, but I'll let them speak more to their fields, and also how they were inspired by seeing representation on Star Trek, and what their favorite Star Trek and/or Nichelle Uhura moment was, because I think everyone here has some sort of anecdote in that direction. So we're going to kick it off with the person I know the best, Dr. Erin Macdonald, PhD, Science Advisor for Star Trek. And yeah, so Erin, tell us a little about yourself and your Star Trek inspirations.
Yeah, thank you. It's wonderful to be here and just get to interact with all these wonderful people and help support the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. I think, representation on screen is just so important to me because it is literally how I got into science. And I know everyone here has their own stories as well. For me, as a little redheaded girl, little redheaded white girl watching TV as a kid, I got really inspired by Dana Scully first, watching the X-Files, and she would put on a lab coat and fight aliens with science. And I just loved her. And then later, as I was going through my career, I got into Star Trek, and Captain Janeway in particular for me was such an inspiration. She really did become like a mentor for me. And I know everyone has their characters and different people that they related to on the series. But for me, it was Captain Janeway that I just kind of saw myself in. She was the type of leader that I wanted to be. And so for me, it's just really important that representation continues on screen, and that every kid of every background can look at themselves, watch television and see what their opportunities are and see who they could become. And that, it really is that ethos of see it, be it. You see yourself on screen and you go, oh, maybe I could do that one day. But personally, my favorite Uhura moment on screen that has stayed with me forever, and I'm so sorry if I steal this from someone else, we coordinated, but I love, it always cracks me up when at one point they call Uhura Fair Maiden. She goes, neither, thanks. Moving on. It is just one of my favorite lines of all time and delivered so brilliantly. So thank you again. I'm looking forward to the rest of this conversation, but it's just wonderful to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. That is such a great moment. Oh my God. There must be a meme somewhere, right?
Probably.
Great. And next, we're going to talk with Jasmin Brown, who is Nichelle's niece, as we said, and Marion's granddaughter, and a physician and doing awesome, wonderful things. I'll let you speak more to that.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction. So, as you said, my name is Jasmin. I'm a board-certified pediatrician. I've been practicing on my own since 2019. So some would still call me an infant in this career, but nonetheless, I'm doing it. I'm one of a few pediatricians in the Coachella Valley, and the only pediatrician in my clinic. I've always had a passion for serving underserved communities of color, communities as of my own. And so right now I work for a federally qualified health center in Southern California, where I serve the families of immigrant and farm workers and their children, and providing access to care for them. Let's see. So I will say I was born in the late 80s, so almost 90s. So when Star Trek was out, I could barely see the hand in front of my face. So, I think it's not so much Star Trek that inspired me, but definitely my aunt. So Nichelle Nichols, my Auntie Shelly mom is what we called her. She definitely was my inspiration. And I know it's so crazy that when I see her, and I think of her, I see her as my aunt, and when I hear everyone talk about her and when I see how she's inspired the world, it just blows my mind that's who I love. That's who, would put me on her lap and, be there at family events and, buy me gifts and all of those things. So, but I think growing up, while the world saw her as Lieutenant Uhura, I saw her as my powerful aunt. And I remember thinking at very young, my cousins and I would sit around, and my sister, she would bring us into the room and talk to us about her journey. And, again, at the time, she's my aunt, right? So she's telling me that, her time spent with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I'm like, you met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And that was the exciting part to me, right? And just her stories of, times of uncertainty, times of fear, of even of her own self-doubt, and more importantly, her courage to overcome naysayers and all of the discrimination and people that doubted her, really was incredibly inspiring to me. And just knowing the type of endurance she had, I remember thinking and seeing her just move about at different family events and parties. She used to host wonderful parties, and seeing how amazing and just confident and fierce she was. And I remember thinking that's who I want to be like. And so with that, I allowed myself to dream, I think, and I pursued, knowing that, if she could do it, I think I could do it too. when it comes to my favorite Star Trek moment, well, I think I'd have to say that her interracial kiss. And so I tell people that all the time. When people have, you have those like icebreakers and stuff, like two truths and a lie or whatever the case. I always add that, my aunt was Lieutenant Uhura on the original Star Trek, and she shared the first interracial kiss on United States television. And everyone's like, picks something else as a lie or picks that as a lie. I'm like, nope, that's the truth. And everyone loses their mind. And I just think that that's such a cool part of not just history, but my family's history. So that's just something that I think just resonates with me. So yeah, that's me.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I love hearing all of those anecdotes. And I think it is so wonderful to have so much of Nichelle's biological family and, extended family here. I mean, she built a family throughout her life in so many ways, and it's beautiful to be able to celebrate that impact. So thank you for being one of the many wonderful representations of that and doing all that you do. Next, we're going to talk to LaShana Lewis, who is an entrepreneur and business consultant. And yeah, I'll just let you take it from here, LaShana.
Thanks, Mary. So I grew up as a little kid in East St. Louis, Illinois, and I tell people either you know where that is or you have no idea where it is. But it's also the home of Jackie Joyner Kersee. And we have crossed paths, but I don't personally know her. She's not on speed dial. But growing up there, I was in the housing projects on welfare, born in the late 70s. So my introduction to Star Trek was on a black and white television. I joke with people that for the longest, I had no idea what color the uniforms were because until my 20s, because I was like, it was just that kind of thing where we didn't have access to a lot. But the one thing I did get out of Star Trek that really kind of grasped me, being about, 8, 9, 10 years old, is getting into the next generation and starting to watch it. So, my introduction again to seeing somebody that looked like myself was seeing Geordi LaForge and seeing, how the entire staff just worked together and how much they respected him. And I just said to myself, oh, okay, well, I can be an engineer. That's not a problem, right? And I learned about the history of Star Trek, the original series. I used to watch Lucille Ball. I love Lucy, so I understood how Lucille Ball was involved with the whole entire thing. So I was just loving it. So when I went to, I had a chance to go to college. I won a full scholarship, and I wanted to go into computer engineering. That was the thing I wanted to do. So again, that's when reality hits you, right? And there weren't any people that looked like me actually in the class. So you're talking early to mid 90s. I was one of 2 Black people in my entire major, and I was the only Black woman. So with that, I kept running into all of these different barriers because I was trying to talk to my peers and things like that. And they're just like, okay, you don't want to do this. You're here to get a husband. And then I joked and I said, joke's on you. I'm a lesbian. So I'm not here to get a husband. I'm here to because I was actually interested in it. Unfortunately, I ended up leaving school after 3.5 years. But when I got home, I did as much as I could. Even though I worked customer service jobs, I ended up actually going on ahead and building up my computer knowledge. And eventually I worked my way through a program called Launch Code. That was one of the early boot camps. And they gave me a chance to show my skills. And I got a job as a computer engineer for the very first time in 2014. And I'll talk about this a little later, but I had a magnificent series of events happen where in 2015, I was asked to meet another famous Star Trek fan, Barack Obama, and was invited to the White House to meet him. So based off of hearing about my life story and all of that. So I will give my one quick Nichols anecdote, and that was I went to St. Louis Comic-Con, as us nerds do. And I was there at the table. Literally, my friends had to push me to the table to go and get an autograph because I was so nervous. And she was very nice, very kind, tried to talk to me a little bit. And I think I eked out some words. Do not ask me what they were. I have no idea. But I was able to get one of Nichelle's necklaces that she had with the Delta symbol on it, and she signed it for me, and I still have it. I don't have it up here, but it's like tucked away safely somewhere else. And all I knew is that she had like this beautiful aura, and she fills the room. And that was in a convention center, and it was just, you could feel the energy buzzing around her. Oh, and my wife just found this for me. So yeah, this is it with her signature.
Yes, that's her glorious signature.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my gosh, just everything you said, so inspiring and exciting. And also you and Erin need to bond over your Lucille Ball, I Love Lucy stuff, just a heads up. Among the other many things that y'all will bond over. Yes, just so exciting. I can't wait to dive in more to your experiences as we move on to our questions. But we have last but certainly not least, Sydney Hamilton, commercial astronaut in training and aerospace engineering manager, and awesome human. I'll let you take it from here, Sydney.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. So hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Hamilton. I am a rocket scientist by study. I am training, or I'm in a commercial astronaut training experience program, which has been incredible. So I'm sure you can already kind of see the alignment of where I was inspired. And I am also a huge STEM advocate, and a lot of my time I spend giving back to the community, because I truly believe if she can see it, then she can be it. I'm also an American Association of the Advancement of Science. That's a mouthful. If Then ambassador, which surprisingly, our mantra is, if she can see it, then she can be it. So super in alignment. I grew up in the South, and such a supportive family structure. My dad grew up saying, that's my little engineer. And when I was younger, I could go to the library and check out science experiments, which is, I think we need to do that everywhere, is have science experiments in the library. Because for me, it's what drew me in. And thanks, Mom, for cleaning up all the messes that I made from my science experiments. But I was that kid that used to stand outside, blanket tied around your neck, arms straight out, and once in the ready position, I would try to take off. I always felt like there was so much more to explore, so much more out there, and it can't just be us. Not with millions and billions of galaxies out there, like what else is there? So I've always been super fascinated by the skies. I went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's probably the first time where I really got to see Black women specifically and the accomplishments, including Nichols. And a lot of the names that are becoming more relevant and prevalent today, we studied while I was at Spelman as a part of our history. So it's really amazing to see how the excitement and everyone here today. Similar story for me when I was at University of Michigan and I studied aerospace engineering. I was one of 4 Black women in my class. So finding that support sometimes was challenging. And I think that's why I'm always wanting to give back, because you don't always get to see it. Although Mae Jemison inspired me, who was also inspired by Lieutenant Uhura. So the universe always makes it align. So it's really cool. And I would say my favorite moment, sorry, Erin, we did have the favorite moment on screen. So I'm going to do a favorite off screen moment. I had a backup just in case. I said, someone's going to say this, watch. Going back to her interaction with Martin Luther King Jr., there was a moment where she felt like, I don't know if I should do this moving forward. I don't know if I'm making an impact. And why this is one of my favorite moments is because it shows us, one, how human we all are. And you can be an inspiration and still doubt yourself. You can be making a huge difference and still question the direction that you're going. And the fact that she persevered through maybe some of the self-doubt or external naysayers that were making a negative impression, she was able to push through. And for me, I find that
really motivating and inspiring, because there are times where I feel like, am I doing the right thing? Should I be here? Am I in the right place? And to know that people that you admire also experience that really humanizes them, and also shows that you can push through. And at any point in your life, whether you're super successful or just getting started, you can have those feelings and still be great.
That was beautifully said.
Absolutely. I agree. And such a beautiful, perfect segue into our first question, really reflecting on the generational influence, like you said, from Nichelle to Nichelle to May, excuse me, and so forth. And I know I've experienced this too, speaking to the generations of women on the various Star Trek shows at conventions and hearing the way in which the representation on screen and behind the scene has continued to evolve. But of course, what we really want to focus on today is what each of you individually are doing in your passions and what you're doing to inspire the next generation with foundations, organizations, some of which you've already touched upon. But we'll start also focusing, since we are talking about representation on screen, with Erin talking about being the science advisor for the entire Star Trek franchise, which never becomes boring for me to say. I'm always really thrilled to celebrate that and all the hard work that Erin is doing behind the scenes to make sure that science is fun and exciting and based in reality. But also, as we were chatting in prep for this, we were talking about how DC Fontana, or Dorothy Fontana, had to actually hide her identity as a woman, as a writer of some of the most celebrated and iconic Star Trek episodes, starting from episodes in the original series. And now we see showrunners like Michelle Paradise, women, a queer woman, in fact, for Michelle, leading a Star Trek franchise as showrunner. So there's been a huge amount of progress when it comes to behind the scenes representation. And Erin is obviously a literal example of that as well. So if you can speak to that, and then of course, everything else you're doing to inspire the next generation.
Thank you. Yeah. It's such an honor for me to be the science advisor for Star Trek, because that's like, I still have to pinch myself, and I've been doing it for almost 4 years now, which is crazy. But for me, when I was leaving academia, I really, truly internally struggled with the fact that I felt like I was removing myself from being able to inspire future generations. I felt like leaving academia, I was no longer interacting with students, I was no longer interacting with graduate students, and I wasn't able to stand in front of a classroom and have kids see kind of a tattooed heavy metal fan woman, with punky hair, and be able to see themselves and be inspired by me, because I didn't have that. But on the journey that I went on, and I'm so grateful that, I had mentorship from some of my male colleagues to just kind of really encourage me to not feel held back by that, and to say that I would still be able to inspire people no matter what I was doing. I was always going to be a scientist, no matter what career path I ended up going down. And so I kind of went on this long journey. I worked in aerospace engineering. I did teaching. I worked at science museums. And it took me a long time, but what I eventually discovered, because I got my pleasure and my joy from teaching out by going to conventions, just like offering fan panels on the science behind science fiction and the physics of Star Trek and how faster than light travel works. And I would get my joy from teaching out of that. And I still felt, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough, but I still felt that I was given the opportunity to inspire people through that means, but it was difficult. I was not, it was all on my own dime, all on my own weekend times. And so it was a little hard to sustain that. And then when I finally started working as an advisor in the industry, it wasn't until I started working on Star Trek Prodigy that they told me I was going to be writing lines for Captain Janeway, the actual character who inspired me and got me through graduate school. And I kind of was like super cool and professional about it, I'd like to think. But as soon as I got to my car, I just burst into tears, because I finally realized what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be Captain Janeway. I didn't want to be Dana Scully. I wanted to write those characters. I wanted to create those characters that would then inspire future generations. And so, yeah, I do have a poster in my eyeline here of one of DC Fontana's scripts. And I also have a picture of Lucille Ball next to my desk as well, of just strong women who saw the importance of representation and getting their stories told. And, currently what's so wonderful is, I'm the first woman science advisor for Star Trek, and I'm able to provide that point of view. Thank you. I'm able to provide that point of view, not just as, literally like, this is how you should talk about a black hole, but to say like, this is how scientists, and particularly as a woman scientist, you feel, and the characters that we're writing a lot of them are scientists at their core. And so being able to insert just what that's like and what our mindsets are like into those characters to make them authentic is so, so important for me. So I'm so grateful that like now I can help inspire the next generation of scientists through storytelling and through Star Trek. Because what's so beautiful about Star Trek is that it's been around now for so long that we're getting multiple generations of scientists inspired by it. And so now, especially with the LGBTQ representation we have on Star Trek Discovery and in all the shows, I'm incredibly proud of that and just happy to even just have my name flash by on the credits. That was a little part of that. So thank you.
Thank you. And I can testify. I have been over at Erin's house where she's had to take a call early in the morning and dissect some very scientific thing. And I'm just always very impressed that her brain works that early in the morning on such intense science topics. You mentioned Prodigy, and I did want to celebrate that not only have you contributed to the science and the writing, but you, in fact, were a character, Dr. Erin Macdonald. If you want to speak a little to that, I think that would be something we'd all love to celebrate.
Sure, briefly. I was so touched because I had shared this story that I just shared with you with the showrunners for Prodigy, because they were having me come in, because it's for kids, to try to write those, like very specifically, yes, we want the science to be right, but we also want you to help shape these characters that we hope will inspire kids to become scientists. And a main character for that was Rock Talk, who's a young girl who takes a journey to discover that she loves science, but is trying to figure out what her field is, what she wants to study. A lot of that was based on my own kind of personal life. And then when they were trying to think of like who the kids would meet when they get to Starfleet, they were like, Rock Talk has to meet Dr. Erin, like that. It has to come full circle. And so I did the voice recording for it. They animated me. And I'm one of only two people who have played themselves on Star Trek, and it's myself and Stephen Hawking, so no pressure. but yes, I still get emotional thinking about it, because all of that strife and struggle internally that I went through, thinking that I would never be inspiring people again, to then literally have that on screen to inspire a Star Trek character to pursue science was like really important to me. So thank you for mentioning that. Sorry.
Absolutely. Once you said Prodigy, I was like, I can't go through this panel without mentioning. And it's so exact. I mean, it is in line with what we're talking about, representation literally on and off screen. And also Rock Talk, I just relate to so much. I am Rock Talk. Anyway, now we are going to move on to, of course, next to Jasmin, if you can speak to, again, what your passions are today, the organizations, and what you've been, all the awesome things you've been doing.
Yes, well, I must say, sitting among all of these powerful, powerful women, I feel like this big, I think we, there's something I should probably just mention. I was going to mention it later, but something called imposter syndrome that I think I know we talk a lot about in healthcare, but in the medical field, but I can see everybody nodding their head and knowing what that is. And when you are doing all these great things and you're in this position, but you still feel like, do I deserve to be here? Am I really? Is this? Can I really do this? And still not feel quite confident in yourself? And so even though I have wonderful things I've done, I'm like, I don't know if I still even should be on this panel. These women sound amazing.
So we're not going to let you doubt yourself here. You are powerful, or you are in this room because you are meant to be here. Just like I said, right place, right time, all the time. You're meant to be here.
Right. And you juggle so many different things. Talk about it.
Yes. So as you know, like the path to medicine is a pretty grueling and long process. And I've spent, very focused as well, trying to get into where I am now for pediatrics. So I take care of for babies up until 18 years of age, excuse me. And during that process, I've spent most of my time doing mentorship. And so getting out into the community, talking to other college students, or when I was actually in medical school and residency, going back and talking to particularly females, but definitely both male and female, females about medicine, about the journey to get here. And mostly, I think the biggest part of that was the encouraging part of it, because I think many of the people that were in these programs have heard a lot of no's, but we're also looking and still determined to hear yeses. And so I think just being one of those women to be able to stand up and say, yes, this is hard. Yes, I failed the MCAT on the first time, but you can still do all of these things. Was one of the things that I wanted to make sure I kept doing. And, the more I was thinking about, what I'm currently doing, I realized that I could be doing a lot more, now that I finished residency and got my mind out of residency, which is the hardest 3 years of my life, and then into the medical field itself. I think I've been pretty streamlined in just making a name for myself, getting established, and then doing our pre-panel here. I was like, I need to get back into my mentorship, But I do a lot of in my clinic right now. I have a passion for addressing childhood obesity, and so that's I created a program in my clinic called the Healthy Life Program, where I spend every day talking to my children and their families about nutrition, about physical habits that I hope that they can maintain for their life, because health is lifelong, and it's not just something that we try to manage in a few months and get our blood pressure or cholesterol down. And I even see these comorbidities in children right now, and we don't talk about it enough. I don't think we do. And so I've created this program where I get kids excited about nutrition. I get kids excited about moving their bodies and thinking about what health means, and that even at this very young age, we can make changes now. So when I get older, I can talk to the kids in my community, my friends, my family, how to keep themselves healthy as well. Because I do work, in a hot, dry spot for medicine where there's not enough access to healthcare, which is why I wanted to work. I work about an hour away from where I live. But my goal was to be where I think that I can do the most help, and impacting families and working on things, not just their comorbidity secondary to obesity, but their mental health and the social determinants of health that actually affects their ability to become, to be healthy, whether it comes to their ability to be transportation, if they're living in poverty, racism, language barriers, all of these things affect their health. And I get to address those things and help them on a daily basis to be the healthiest, best person I think they could be. And I think it's my pride and joy. And I've had great success with my patients. And the most exciting thing to me is when they tell me that they get their friends up or their families up to go out and exercise because of things we've talked about in our clinic. And so I'm hoping that just in our little clinic here, we're making bigger changes across the board. But yeah, that's my baby, and that's what I love to do right now.
That is so tremendous and wonderful. And yes, health is for life. So I'm so glad that you're doing this, especially, and taking the time to go an hour away from where you live. Like that's, the dedication and passion is just so evident in all you've described. So thank you for doing all of that.
Thank you.
And health is so important. I'm, in my early 80s now, and I thoroughly believe that for each decade that we live, what we do in that decade contributes or to what your next decade is going to look like. And if you just sit back in your 20s and don't try to advance your health and make sure that you're making healthy choices, in your 30s, you're going to not do as well if you don't work it out in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and your 60s. I ran a marathon when I was 60 years old for the first time, wow. in Hawaii. And I did that to show my grandchildren that were being born then, that were just coming up, that it doesn't matter how old you are. If you just keep your health, you can keep going. And so, I'm glad to hear you doing that, Jasmin.
Yes, yeah. And You're
add
an
that in
inspiration.
there.
I don't tell anybody your age, but I'm like, you would not believe how girl my grandma was, and she is out there. She is doing it. I have her genes. I'm excited about that. But you're taking care of yourself, and you're an inspiration to me too, and to my patients as well.
Wonderful. We love it. Again, the generational inspiration. Next, we'll go to LaShana talking about, what all the awesome things you've been doing.
Well, as my grandmother says, I do too much. I do a lot. But I'll roll it back a little bit to, once I got my job as a computer engineer, doing it for the first time, going through one of the very early stages of the computer learning programs that was established. I was just thinking to myself, I just, am kind of out here trying to be successful. I don't know where I could help anyone. I struggled myself. But at last minute, the program asked me to do a testimonial video. It was hot and sweaty outside. I was wearing like a button-down shirt, and I said, sure, I'll talk. And I talked, and I went away. And then that's when I found out a few months later that apparently President Obama had seen the video, and it helped inspire. So I know, right? It helped inspire this idea to have a bill passed where there would be $100 million effort pushed across the country to have more programs like mine, just based off of my testimonial and like my story and the things that I went through and what that program was doing. And I was being asked to, be the spokesperson for that and the poster child. And I was like, I'm just a computer engineer that just really got to where I am. And then it's just kind of like, we underestimate the importance of voices. If I would have never did that video, if I would have said, no, I'm not a speaker, I'm not a talker, I can't do that, it would have never progressed to that. But then even once that happened and, my mom got to see President Obama talk about me and cried and all of that, I turned around and I started getting like all these questions from people whenever I would do panel discussions or something like that. I mean, to the point I wasn't used to talking to people. I literally moved over because I thought I was standing in someone's way, but it was just a line of people after the panel discussion that wanted to talk to me and ask me, how do I get my kid into computer engineering? They are smart and, they come from a disadvantaged background economically. And, what do I do? How do I get started? And I just started speaking. I just started talking and I was like, I'm not polished. I'm not, Toastmasters. I'm just someone that's trying to go through and share a bit of my experience and help other folks. And then that actually rolled into me going around to different schools, especially where I grew up, and saying, you can do this, you can be me. And I thought to myself, what if I would have had that, as a kid? I don't think I remember, a Black computer engineer really coming to talk to me and saying, hey, I'm here, you can get here too. So a lot of what I did was for a while, and I still do it on occasions, is go around to high schools or programs where, there's women in tech or girls in tech type of programs where they need somebody to speak. And I tell them about my experience and try to encourage them. And that rolled into the program that Obama pushed out. It was called Tech Hire Initiative, but they saw that it was bigger than tech, that, all of STEM could utilize someone that has, experience and skills and maybe is from an underrepresented background, and it rolled into opportunity at work. So with that program, I've become one of the chief speakers to say, we need more women, we need more people of color, especially BIPOC folks in the sciences, because now, the customers of science are starting to change. Their faces are starting to change. They're starting to look like you and I, and, not the typical white cis hetero male. So we're going to need those people in the background too, who are producing those same items that are, behind the scenes and creating things. So with Opportunity at Work, I've had a chance to just go on stage all over this country and talk. And that rolled into a PSA that I did. It's called Tear the Paper Ceiling. And it's, for those that remember Smokey the Bear, It's the same company that did that. And they asked me to come in and film a piece of it. I have no acting background, but they asked me to do it, and I said yes. And I figured I'd figure it out later. But with that said, now that commercial is posted nationwide and it's on television. I've seen it pop up, but it's to tell people, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter what you look like. You can still have the same opportunities as me. And now we're creating programs that will be able to make this a lot easier for you than it was for myself.
That's great.
Yeah, just absolutely. I just the theme of also the individual interactions in addition, like to get to do the PSA is so magnificent. And then also going from school to school and just letting kids see you and speak and be human. And and we'll touch more on overall and what Jasmin mentioned too of imposter syndrome and the challenges. That'll be kind of in line with our second question. But I think it's so beautiful to be empowered to be all that you are, which includes the insecurities and the excitement and the celebration and the challenges. But yes, Sydney, if you could speak to as well. I know you've been doing tons of tremendous things, inspiring generations.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm passionate about science, technology, engineering, and math, and showing students and future generations of STEM leaders that they have the opportunity. It's not that I necessarily want to build everyone to be engineers and scientists. I just want you to be exposed to the point where you know that you can do it and that you have the choice to pursue your dream. Kind of like growing up, like I said, I wanted to fly. I also wanted to be a princess. But for me, Mulan was my favorite princess because I didn't have a princess that looked like me growing up. So she matched my energy. But in media, we didn't have a Dr. Erin Macdonald to make sure that that voice was heard. And so I realized later that the reason I struggled with the concept of being a princess was because I didn't have the representation that I needed. And I think that developed into a passion of helping people understand and see themselves. So there was an application that my friend sent me, and she's like, actually, I think you'd be perfect for this. And I was like, okay, like, sounds good. What is this ambassadorship? She's like, here's a catch. It's due in 5 days. You need 3 letters of recommendation. You have 3 essays, and it's this whole overwhelming, the imposter syndrome Jasmin talked about. Oh, it was on full effect for 5 days of like, am I even going to get picked? Do I even want to do this? I don't know. Is this possible? And I was selected for the If Then ambassadorship. And since then, I was taught how important it was for me to share my story and how important it is. Like, I did a lot of community service, but I did it quietly because I didn't feel like it was something that I needed to share. In learning how to share my story, I realized how important it was. And I have become an aquanaut, which means I lived underwater for 24 hours and live stream that with kids to teach about extreme science. I'm going back again in May to do a similar exercise. I do an experiment underwater. The kids do it above water. I've been on Mission Unstoppable, where I taught the concept of flight on one episode and the concept of zero gravity on another one. Now, zero gravity is amazing. If you ever have the chance, please go on. It's called the Vomit Comet as well. Just follow instructions. I promise you, it's not as bad as it sounds. But my favorite moments that really get to showcase like where I get to share my passion with people was like giving talks at school. I remember it was like pajama day at this elementary school. They were pretty young. And we were talking about what we're doing in space at my company and all these different things. And afterwards, the kids are coming up and asking questions. And there's this little black girl, she had 2 big puffballs. And she was just staring. And I was like, do you have a question? And she just looked at me, didn't move. So kids are talking to me. We're having all these conversations. And I kept turning to her. I was like, did you want to talk? And she just kept looking. So eventually, like, I just diverted my attention and got to her level. And I was like, how's it going? And she just nodded. And I was like, do you want to go to space? She was like, no, she shook her head. No, she's like, no. And I said, oh, do you want to build a rocket? And she's like, and I was like, are you going to be the one that builds the rocket that sends me to Mars? And her eyes just got big and she nodded and walked away. And I was like, wow, she's probably not seen someone who looks like her doing the things that she wants. So she didn't have a question. She was just like, is this person real? Like, and it's those moments why I'm passionate about giving back and doing it in so many different ways, shapes, or forms. So I'm an adventure junkie. So if you have something that you think you want to see us try, let me know. But that's really how I share my STEM journey and my passion.
That's just so beautiful. Oh, Marion, did you?
No, I was just saying, your stories are just so beautiful. I'm in awe of all of you. It's wonderful. Absolutely. I second that. And speaking to representation, you were saying Mulan, that was a big one for me too. How I always thought, I extrapolate my representation, like I'm not quite seeing myself, but I have certain icons that I'm seeing that the world's putting out there. And so I remember making it a mission, I'll be the representation that I wanted to see. And I think what's beautiful is each person here is that. We're not all the same person, thank goodness. And by each of us being empowered to be our true, authentic selves, then there is someone who will see us and see an aspect of themselves. And I just think that that's really beautiful and empowering and a good reminder to me too, just as an individual, the more that we can be empowered to pursue our passions and speak to those of the younger generation and the older generation too. I mean, I think it's your representation. There may be someone who decides to pursue a field that they always wanted to later in life. And I think that's really exciting too. But speaking in line with, we kind of gave a heads up that this was coming, speaking to the imposter syndrome, the challenges, as we said, I think it's very important to not only celebrate our successes, but acknowledge that because of the world we live in, as we've said, that we still are making a lot of progress when it comes to representation. If there have been any moments of failure, which is a term that it still is hard to say sometimes because I'm like, well, it's not a failure, but how to embrace our failures or obstacles you've come up against, or if, an individual who can remain nameless may have told you no, or that, you couldn't pursue a certain aspect of what you wanted to pursue, how you overcame that challenge. Anything in that line, and we'll kick it off with Erin.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I spoke a lot before on the struggle I had leaving academia, so I won't dwell too much. But I do think for me, it's the biggest struggles that I've come up against have just been trying to figure out what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And I never really went into academia with a goal of becoming a professor. And then I left that. I didn't really know who I was, what I wanted to do. And really, it was just continually reminding myself of my roots and the things that got me excited about life, the things that got me excited about who I was and who I wanted to be. And it all came back to television, it really did. And embracing that was okay. I felt like that was hard to say. And people would ask who my mentors were. And I'd be like, oh, I don't really have one. It's like, no. Captain Janeway, Lucille Ball, those, they were mentors to me, whether or not I ever met them, whether or not they were fictional. And so just trying to remember the core of who you are, which is so hard, and I'm so glad that Jasmin brought up imposter syndrome, because I think it hits all of us all the time. And anytime I'm just having a really, really tough struggle time with life, with my career, is I try to just watch my favorite episodes of TV and remind myself why I'm doing this. And it's hard, but we do what we can. So, yeah.
Love it.
That's great. Yeah, it is amazing that representation can just be empowering. But yes, so Jasmin, you already spoke to this, but any further
Yeah, no. So one of the things that I have faced, throughout my training and even as being the pediatrician, the only pediatrician in my office, I still get, microaggression and I feel like discrimination because I'm a young female woman of color physician. And I can't tell you how oftentimes I walk into a room and I tell them I'm the doctor, and I get this huge look of surprise on their faces, or "You're the doctor?" And yes, I'm the doctor. And I know I look young and I don't look like your typical doctor, but I can guarantee you that I'm trained and can take on anything that you've got for me, essentially. And I have, I've always assumed to be a different role. I think immediately as someone looks at me, they have an assumption of who I am or what I am capable of potentially. And I am always assumed to be like the nurse, which to me is not an insult. Nurses are amazing and do way more than I think I do. But I'm always, they don't believe I'm in that role. And even when I am, I've said I'm a doctor. I've seen your child, we've done all these things. I still get addressed as Miss at the end, or get addressed by my first name. And I'll never forget a time when I was still in training. I was in the emergency room, but I was in my third year. And I walked in. I introduced myself as the doctor. The family told me the story. I evaluated the child. I gave them my assessment, my plan. Prescribed them or told them how we're going to treat the child, was ready to discharge them. And as I was walking out the door, the father said, "When are we going to see the doctor?" And I was like, after all of that I've been in here for about 45 minutes and you're still questioning that I was even the doctor. And I think that I have a confidence now that took me some time to build, and being around strong women, seeing my aunt not take lip from anybody. It's something I think I really took to heart and really helped me with my own confidence. And seeing that no matter whatever your gender, whatever color you are, whatever language you speak, you still deserve that respect. You still deserve, you've earned it. You deserve that respect. And so I make it be known, and I don't let it fly anymore. And so when someone calls me Miss, I tell them I'm the doctor, and I say it again with confidence. And kind of like, just as you kind of touched on, I think it's, as women and in society, it's in the air we breathe. We're born into it. It's what we've been taught to believe. And to comply and say, okay, well, maybe, it's fine. I just want to dress it, or I'll just kind of leave it at be, and just move on, or, kind of let it go. And I think that my Auntie Shelley mom is such a shining example and representation of what happens when you don't comply, and when you don't say, fine, I'll just kind of sit here and, let people say what they need to say. And when you address the discrimination head on, addressing, people's biases, making people feel a little bit uncomfortable, making them rethink what they know and what they know a doctor to be or an aerospace engineer to be. You can change a person's mind, and before you know it, you can change the world. And I get emotional thinking about how these small little things that we do that we don't even realize, I think, on a daily basis, as being who we are and pursuing our passions, are making that change. And we are part of that change. And sometimes, with the imposter syndrome, you really kind of sit back and say, wow, am I really part of this? Is this really me? Am I really making a difference? And I'm sure all of you feel the same way, but hearing you women, powerful women talk, it's a reminder, that we are the people that we looked to when we were younger, and it's hard to wrap our minds around that, right? I don't know. I think I'm rambling. I tend to ramble, but I think that it's being able to be here and just see women such as yourself. I'm inspired myself being just on this panel as well. But the no matter how high we get to, what level we get to, there are still going to be people that still say no, even when we're there, even when we're in that position, that still say no, that don't want to believe it. But surrounding yourself with those that say yes, that believe you, that support you, that's what matters. I think I've had enough people to make me feel like, kind of emphasize that imposter syndrome. I mean, when they say things like that and, call me by miss and, question what I'm doing, it makes you start to question yourself. But having people that support you and understand you and emphasize the importance of what you do and who you are, I think is crucial to success. And I know that growing up and going into college, that was one of the things that I think helped me be super successful, is being part of like our medical scholars program and our health professions advising center and being around like-minded people of color, people that I can relate to. We had similar backgrounds too, that were doing it as well, that were trying as well and supporting each other. So even when you have 2 or 3 no's, when you have 15 yeses and supporting, you feel like you can do it and you can do it. And we did do it, and it's really fun to see how far you've come and we believed in ourselves, and I try to remind myself on a regular basis when I do have these micro aggressions and things like that it doesn't matter what you think or if you believe in me, I believe in me, and I'm here and I'm doing it, and I'm really proud of myself. And I'd like to think that my Auntie Shelly mom would be proud of me too. I miss her a lot.
Well, I have no doubt that she is. Absolutely not. And the passion with which you speak, with which you all speak, I think that's something that's really striking me in this conversation is, why wouldn't anyone want this level of passion and intellect in these fields? I mean, come on, this is exactly who I want. Changing the world as people who care deeply. And I'm just really proud to be in this community speaking to that right now. And I'm just going to kick it to LaShana because I know you have tons of awesome things to say too.
I have tons of anecdotes, but I'll shave it down to a couple because what everyone is saying echoes. It's pretty much almost the exact same experience that one gets over and over again. One of the ones that kind of sticks out in my mind is when I was first getting into the computer science program in college, of someone saying the thing about, you're just here for a husband, but they are also saying, you type of people would actually do really well in liberal arts. And I just had to kind of pull myself back and say, this person is talking about themselves and their experience. They're not talking about me. They're not talking about what I can actually potentially do. And to kind of keep that steadfast in my head whenever I'm going through and, going and trying to encourage other people to get into this field. One thing that happened is once I started working as a computer engineer, I went through an apprenticeship program. I got fast tracked through it for 2 months because they found out that I actually knew how to code. And they were like, oh, you don't need to learn anything. You already know how to do this job. And I decided to take a chance on myself, which I always recommend people do that, do invest in yourself. And I took one of the vendor neutral certifications that was out there that could actually say, what you need to know to be a computer server engineer. So I went and I not only took that test, but I took kind of the preview test, which actually had 25% more questions than the regular exam would, because every now and then they throw out some new ones and they're just like, hey, come be part of the test group. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. If I get it, great. If I don't get it, then it'll at least give me a sheet that says, these are the things you need to work on. And I told some guys that I was working with that I did it. And they were just like, oh, anybody could have taken that test. I said, no, it's a proctored test. I actually had to go in and give my ID and they take a picture of my face and I am on the computer and nobody else I can't chew gum. I can't do anything. It is literally a proctored exam. But he was saying it as though it was flippant and was just like, you're just doing the easy route. And I was like, no, there were other white guys in this room with me also taking the same exam. And in the end, they said I wouldn't find out for months whether or not, I got it. And I was like, if I didn't pass it, it's not that big of a deal. And then I got a letter in the mail that said, you passed the test. Even when we threw out the questions that we weren't even going to use anymore, you still passed the test. And I got my certification and I showed it to the guys and they just had nothing to say. So it was like that moment for me that I tell people is like, you have to just keep going. They're going to say stuff to you and it's going to be in your face. And it may be people that you work with every single day. But, the proof is in the pudding. I have the certificate. I didn't make up the program or anything like that, but it shows people that you are what you say you are. And still people are going to say something. The last anecdote I'll give is that I went to a preview showing of Hidden Figures, and I had on a shirt that I had gotten from Micro Center, one of those tech places that says, I'm an engineer. And I wore it to the event, and I get ready to walk out, and a guy looks at me and he says, "Is that true?" And I look at him and I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He said, "Are you an engineer?" And I said, "Yes, actually I am." He said, "Well, prove it to me." So at that time, because I was doing a lot of speaking engagements for the company I was working for, they went on ahead and got me business cards. So I pulled out the business card and I showed it to him in his face. And he felt it, and he felt that it was not one of those fake ones that was printed out. And he was like, "Wow." And I said, "Yeah." So it's like I was lucky to have the business card at the time, and I still have them. They're still, tucked away. But the point is that, keep pushing forward, keep pushing forward. And even when you get past that, I was certified and all that. And you're still going to have those people who are going to keep pushing back at you. And even when you failed, that failure isn't a stopping point for you. It might be a reroute. So even though it took me 20 years to actually be a computer engineer after I left college, I still, wanted that dream. And even when people told me, you leaving college means you failed, I don't feel like I failed. I felt like I was rerouted. And my reroute got me to meet the first Black president of the United States. So I would say that's a pretty good success from there.
I would agree. I did want to touch on what you were saying too about it's about the other person so often, whatever they're dealing with. And that's a really difficult thing to grapple with because you are personally affected when somebody, is prejudiced or, doesn't believe that you are exactly who you are or support that, and how to be able to have the ability to understand that it's something they're working through, but also teach them a lesson and give them the card and know that that is part of the journey right now, because we are not all in an equal place, unfortunately, as our society has mandated. We are all truly equal, but our society hasn't reflected that fully. So we do have to push through and let people know exactly, I'm a doctor, I am an engineer, so that they can really see that representation and work some things out for themselves on their own and leave you alone. But Sydney, if you could also speak to this.
Absolutely. I just need to start off by saying, not him checking the business card though. Like, that's so extra.
He ran his finger across it and everything to check that it was a real.
Snatched it back. Like, okay, so obviously you weren't here to be convinced, but yeah, had to start off with that. But like many of y'all, I had to grow into my confidence and learn the language to navigate those situations. There have been so many circumstances, and we won't go over, like you said, lots of anecdotes. There's been moments I walk in and I'm the lead engineer on this project, and luckily at the time I had the confidence where I said, yes, it is me. And if there's any concern about that, I can actually call a backup and they will be available 3 months from now. So your choice is either I can work you through this over the next few months, or you can wait for the next available person. They're like, oh, no, we're fine. We're good. Or, you walk in the room and the assumption of who the manager is as I progress in my career, and they just immediately direct the conversation to someone other than me. And I'm like, hi, so that is one of my engineers on my team. While I think that they'd be brilliant in helping you with your technical issues, if you would like to discuss any managerial issues, please direct all those questions to me. And it's a kind check for people because they sometimes make a disconnect and make some assumptions. But I kind of let people figure it out themselves. I'm not as nice as you. He wouldn't have got my business card. I would have been like, wow, that sounds like a personal problem. But LaShana, I didn't have the wisdom that you did. For me, I can remember in high school, I don't know if y'all had to take aptitude tests, but I did. And it said that I was going to be an engineer, and I was thrilled. I was like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And one of my teachers, he was going through talking to each person about their aptitude test and what they were going to do. And I was like, mine says an engineer. And his immediate response was, don't you think that's going to be difficult for someone like you? And it absolutely crushed me. I remember for the next few days, I was swirling. I'm like, I'm bad at English, geography, awful. I'm like, math and science, those are my things. And if I can't be an engineer, I don't know what I'm going to do. And luckily, and we've talked about it, having the right tribe and the right people around you, my orchestra teacher noticed something was off, and she sat me down and said, what's going on? And I shared with her the story, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Like, I feel so lost. And she just said, Sydney, since when do you listen to anybody? And I was like, you know what? Thank you for that. Thank you for that factory reset and remembering in who I am. So I went on, became an engineer. I did well. And I went back to the high school because I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell him. I walked in that classroom, like I found out when his free period was, and I was like, hi, I'm Sydney Hamilton, and I'm an aerospace engineer. And he looks at me and he's like, I'm sorry, who are you? And in this moment, I realized I've been harnessing these negative feelings based off of a criticism that he gave me years ago, and he has not thought twice about me. And I say this story to say, it was in this moment that I learned I will stop taking criticism from those I wouldn't ask advice from. Granted, I understand that all the feedback that you get, take it with a grain of salt. But if you are not, this is not someone that you would ask advice from, be cautious on taking that criticism to heart, because you can carry that and let it weigh you down, and that person's not even going to remember you. They could have just had a bad day and said something negative to you, and now you've held on to it and they don't even remember those words. And so that was a powerful lesson that people, you're right, it's people's journey, right? It's their own insecurities that they're projecting onto you. And I can't take that on, and I won't take that on moving forward. So that was my lessons learned, and my how to overcome it was having the right people to help me through those problems. And also learning that the person that said that, they don't have to look in the mirror every day on those decisions that are made. You do.
That's so, yeah. I just beautifully said, and I just am so thrilled that we can be in a space where we can really speak to this. I think it's just really essential, and I can see everyone nodding along with everybody else, all the different anecdotes. I think we've all unfortunately been in circumstances where people have not trusted who we are or realized what we're capable of. And yet we are. I think what's resonating with me as well is that representation is also mentorship, and those two really cross blend, and that you had a teacher who could recognize something in you, see the energy shift, and talk to you and empower you, and how mentorship is essential. And I think while mentorship can come from someone who can recognize an aspect of themselves in another person, and I empower all cis white straight men to be empowered to see themselves in anybody and take that mentorship, because unfortunately a lot of the power still lies in their hands because of the patriarchy. And so the more that there can be empowerment and continue to pave that forward and allow space, but then also have these communities where we're here and supporting each other and mentoring each other and celebrating each other. Allyship is great too. But This segues us, you touched on, this final question, which also, as we answer this final question, we are going to show some really fun photos that some of the women have sent of their fun hobbies and geeky selves, because as is very clear, everyone's very intelligent and very passionate and also has a fun side and a geeky side. And so it's important to celebrate all aspects of ourselves. So those photos will, Marian, did you have something to say?
Before you get into the last segment, I just want to say just two little things. Jasmin talks about Auntie Shelley Mom, and I just want to kind of give a kind of some background to how that happened back in the 60s when my dad died. Nichelle's career was just starting to bloom. And so she took in my mom, my younger sister, who had a 2.5-year-old. And of course, Nichelle's son was a preteen, probably 10 or 12 years old at the time. And so Kyle, of course, called Nichelle Mom. And the siblings, Diane and I, and my brothers and sisters, called her Shell or Shelly. And Brett, who was my younger sister's 2.5-year-old son, heard Auntie thrown out there, and he was called her Auntie. And he's the one, Brett was 2.5, because of the confusion in the house and hearing all these names, and my mother being called Mom and Nichelle being called Mom by Kyle. He coined Auntie Shelley Mom because that's how he heard her being addressed. And so it just, every kid after that, all of the nephews, and that's what we ended up calling her. And so even sometimes I'd call her Auntie Shelley Mom, but that's how it grew from the early, mid 60s, I guess it was when my dad passed. But anyway, and the other thing that I would like to do is just a real quick shout out to some young students in the Appalachian Mountains of Kentucky, Frakes, Kentucky. And they're not related to Jonathan Frakes at all, but that's the name of the school. And these are 6 and 8-year-old students that contacted us. And they had won their local contest in the school by doing a presentation on Nichelle. They had found her profile or whatever, because they were 6th graders, 8th graders was, and they had found her profile and decided to do their project on Nichelle. And so they won their local and contacted us when they were going to regional. So I did a Zoom with them, Linda and I did, and talked to them, the principal and all of that. Just want to say they won regional and now they're going on to state. And it's all they're learning and teaching people up in the Appalachian Mountains about Nichelle. So I just want to throw that out.
Absolutely.
Shout out to them and congratulations to the Frakes School Center.
Absolutely. And I love the coincidence of Frakes. That feels...
Isn't that funny?
Wonderful. Talk about a good ally too, Jonathan Frakes. But that's really wonderful. And yeah, congrats to them. And I see lots of good things coming of that. I see them succeeding. Kapla, as we would say in Klingon, had to throw it in. But that's really, really wonderful. And exactly, representation right there, educating folks about the incredible legacy that Nichelle has created. So again, everything has flowed very beautifully. The segues have been excellent. So I'm very grateful to everyone. But just if someone wanted to pursue a career in your field, what specific advice would you share? And some have already shared, we've all shared personal anecdotes, but if there is one particular moment where you've witnessed yourself being the representation, Sydney, you spoke to already such a gorgeous moment with that young girl, where you've been able to be that representation you wanted to see. And as we said, we will be showing some fun images as well as we move through each person's answer. So we'll start again with Dr. Erin.
Yeah, thank you. No, I think what's in terms of being able to I have so many anecdotes flowing through my head. Everyone just spoke so great, and there's so many good stories here. I'm a little overwhelmed. But yeah, I think for people who want to get into my field, we're all a form of science communicators at the end of the day, whether it's, through our jobs, just interfacing with people or interfacing with the general public or making amazing TikTok videos that I know some of you make and Instagram reels and all of those things. The thing that I think has helped me the most in all of my varied careers, from academia to engineering to teaching and now to working in the entertainment industry, has been to be my authentic self, not be afraid to say, I don't know. I think that's one of the hardest things for people to overcome. Just to say, that's a great question. I actually don't know the answer to that. I'm going to go look it up. And yes, you run the risk of people then who are already coming in, not necessarily trusting your expertise. I think that pushes us to kind of maybe fudge it sometimes when we really don't know, but getting confident in just saying that, because we do have the resources and the skills to be able to look it up and to be able to translate that for people who don't have an expertise. And the best thing that I did that I think served my careers very well was actually working at a science museum. And I know there's lots of opportunities to volunteer for a local science center, because that exposed me to people with all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of expertise. And I would talk to a 5-year-old who knew about black holes, to like a retired aerospace engineer, who was curious about recent Mars missions, to maybe, a retiree who hadn't taken a science class since they were, 15 and had been decades. And so learning how to quickly distill information for a variety of audiences, I think, is so important. And the videos, the images you're seeing on the screen, some of the science outreach that I've done, these were done by the Extra Credits YouTube channel, where I've done science behind certain video games. This is from Mass Effect and us explaining how wormholes work. But I also just personally love playing video games, and making costumes and just being nerdy in my own right, and trying to remember those things that help us relax, decompress, come down. I do need to play video games sometimes, and that's what I like to do in my spare time. So I just, as we're kind of ending things, yep, there's me in costume. My husband is Darth Vader in suits. But yeah, it's just really being comfortable as our authentic selves, which I think society does make it hard to be sometimes. And, I literally wear my passions on my sleeve in fairly permanent form and having those conversations. But the last sort of anecdote I'll share along all of these, bringing all of this together, was that I was speaking at an event a couple years ago, and it was like a local school, and it was a public event. And one of the organizers brought his son, who was probably 9 or 10 years old, up to meet me afterwards and said, yeah, did you know Dr. Erin also plays video games? And this child physically was like, wait, what? They were like, what video games do you play? Are you on a PlayStation or an Xbox? What kind of stuff do you do? They couldn't believe that a scientist also loved playing video games just like they did. And so it's amazing, those little connections you make, and just being able to share your passions and your interests with people is just as important as sharing our expertise.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Jasmin?
Yes. So I think I kind of touched on it already. When it comes to medicine, if you have a passion for it, there's a place for you. And I think that find yourself that support system, whether you're, in high school, college, or even sooner than that. But really, when it starts getting grueling and really testing you, high school, college, find that group of people, find people that you trust, a good 1 or 2 mentors, or just one, but have that support. Because I think I think that made me. I think that could have broke me if I didn't have it. So I won't belabor that too much. I think it really, really is important. I'll talk a bit more about it. There's a space now. It's definitely, I think, opening up in 2016 when I graduated from med school. it was about 50-50 females and males in my class, and the diversity. I also went to school. I did my entire training in California. So I went to UC Riverside for college. I went to UC Davis for medical school, and I went to Loma Linda for a pediatric residency. And even in California, the diversity is ginormous and it's incredible and it's beautiful. But I also remember sitting in college, and there was a student that came from the Midwest and said that today, being in that class, she said in front of everybody, it was the first time she'd ever seen a Black person in real life. And I'll never forget how mind-blowing and what a realization that was for me, that there are people on this planet that have never been in the presence of an African-American person, and their only representation is TV and movies, and how that matters tremendously, not just for us that have these passions, but for what people are seeing that have never been in the presence of someone of color, and how important that representation is to show what we're doing and how powerful and how smart and intelligent we are. And not only just on TV, but here too, right? In what we do on an everyday basis. And I just wanted to kind of just say an anecdote of a little girl that I had when I was finishing up my residency around 2016. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Finishing residency in 2019. She was about 4 years old at the time. And I saw the child. And now fly back here to 2023. And my manager calls me and tells me that there is a family that saw you when you were back in your residency that had been looking for you since you left, because their daughter really wants to continue and her father really want to continue to see you. And I didn't remember who it was because I've seen a lot of kids in between then. But when that day that she came back, I walked into the room, and it was a little African-American girl. At the time, she was 4. Now she's about 7, 8 years old. And the dad said that he remembers seeing our interactions, and never had he seen a doctor interact with his daughter the way we did. Like, we were almost friends, and he can tell immediately that she was drawn to me. And even every day they passed the clinic, they live in San Bernardino. Every time they passed the clinic sign, she would say, Dr. Brown, Dr. Brown. And she remembered me from our interactions. And so they drive 81 miles to come see me, just because of, I think, our ability to represent, and show her what's available to her, and that people like her can do really, really cool things. And so that's something that really resonates with me, that they travel all this way because of the representation, and they don't get that at other places. And so, yeah, that's what I've got.
I love Dr. Brown. Just knowing that sign, the impact is huge. It's beautiful.
And it's just the clinic name, and then she associated with it. That was really interesting.
LaShana?
Yeah, no, I had those moments too where people have come back to tell me, that they saw me speaking somewhere and they're doing something awesome. And I'm like, that's absolutely what you have to do. There are a lot of times where, we're kind of faced with going in and saying, do I even belong here? One instance in particular was a woman, I was doing a speaking engagement. I was on a panel. It was very low level. There were about 20 people. And I was talking about my experience, being an engineer. And one woman grabbed the mic to ask a question. And she said, well, I like to download apps, break them apart. I'm sitting in the middle of the night and just kind of reformulating and seeing if I can reconstruct this software app myself and put it back together. But I'm not a computer person. I'm not a tech person. And I was like, well, what makes you say that? She said, well, because tech people are like, white guys that are in their mom's basements with a hoodie on, and they're working and coding in the middle of the night. And I said, ma'am, you just described to me what you're doing is exactly what that is. So to try to get people to kind of break this misconception that they have that, being in a career is looking a certain way as opposed to being a certain way. And a lot of what I do is kind of talk to people and get them to realize if you're doing these things already on your own, then you're already interested in it. So a picture I've got there is me actually volunteering at the St. Louis Science Center. I live in LA right now, but when I lived in St. Louis, I was a planetarium volunteer. So I got to do some star shows. We had a huge star ball, and I would get a chance to operate that. The thing is massive. It's like millions of dollars. So thankfully, it was too hard to break. So I was able to successfully do a few shows. That's me actually standing in front of Artemis 1. Funny story, I applied for the NASA social kind of visitation, and I actually got in. And it just happened to be when Artemis 1 was rolled back to the Vehicle Assembly Building in Florida to be maintenance a little bit before it went back out to launch to the moon. And we were lucky enough to be able to go in and take a picture in front of it. So that's why there's this 10,000 watt smile on my face, because I got a chance to be in front of that. And I think I have one more picture, and that's me cosplaying because, like I said, I'm a nerd. I go to Comic Cons. I just went to LA Comic Con, and that's my wife and I doing Scarlet Witch and Vision. And we tried to do the one where they're like in the house. So I'm actually wearing a black turtleneck and everything. So, and my wife did that makeup. That was all her. So
awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
I really feel like I have a new best friend, by the way, LaShana. So like, we're going to hang out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think so. As a keen observer, there's a lot of cosplay magic happening in your futures together. Yeah, wonderful. Yes, just everything you spoke to. I'm just gonna keep us going because I think we could all keep talking and geeking out about all of this henceforth. But Sydney, please.
Awesome. Well, the advice that I would give, I think we're all in such a constant hurry to get to success. And I put it in quotes because, one, you need to define success for yourself. It may not look like what your friends think success looks like. It may not look like even sometimes what your parents think success looks like. So you really have to take the time to define what success looks like for you. And that comes with understanding yourself. So, life's a journey, not a sprint. So explore, ask the questions. Social media is huge. So reach out to people who are doing things that you find interesting. You said it earlier perfectly. We find ourselves in certain pieces of ourselves in different role models. So don't think you have to find one person that embodies everything that you want to be, because there is only one you. So find those pieces that you're inspired by. Talk to those mentors if you can, reach out or watch those episodes that are inspiring you to reignite. But ask questions and have fun. Have fun while doing it. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. So as I said earlier, I'm an aquanaut, so I love scuba diving. And there's so many things that I do outside that keep me grounded. And along with activities like this, I have quotes, but still I'll rise by Maya Angelou. I never lose. I either win or I learn, which is reframing success. Yes, I love to cosplay, y'all. So we're all, if you're going to Comic-Con this year, let me know because I'll be there. But I never lose. I either win or I learn rephrases how we look at failure. And I think that that's important because we can get wrapped around those mistakes. And for these two, I'll use my quote, see the world like an astronaut, because I imagine one day when I'm there and I'm looking back on Earth, and I won't be thinking about the typo in the email or the text message that I sent too early that, well, now we can edit, but before you couldn't edit. I'll be in awe of the impact and the change that I'm seeing in the world. And then my story of impact, I've always dreamed of having a scholarship, and that's actually how Erin and I met. She was one of my speakers for my girls. I was able to send 4 girls to space camp, and very specifically, I did not add a GPA requirement because I think sometimes we define ourselves by numbers, whether it's your age, whether it's your GPA, whether it's your weight. We find these numbers that we make define us even if they don't. And I wanted to encourage that passion regardless of it. And now there are 3 now high school freshmen that want to be aerospace engineer, and one person wants to be a space doctor. So that is a full slate win of success. So I'm really excited for how the Nichelle Nichols Foundation is working on a space camp scholarship, because it's going to make the difference and it's going to be a huge impact. So really exciting to just be amongst everyone here and such an amazing organization.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all. I mean, this truly has been such an invigorating, inspiring panel, a celebration of everyone's individual strengths and passions, and again, intellect. And I'm just really, really humbled and honored to be a part of the conversation. And now I know all of you at least a little bit. So I'm just grateful to be connected, and I hope everybody watching feels as inspired as I do. And I love knowing. Oh, yes. And as Marion has very duly noted, please donate to the Nichelle Nichols Foundation. The money raised specifically will be to send young women to space camp next June. So what better cause to be contributing to? I know I'm very excited to donate myself. This is exactly what we need: mentorship, representation, celebration of all we're capable of, because of who we are, not because of how we look or how society perceives us. I love that point, LaShana. Again, I could go through all the different things each person here has said and just celebrate. I did want to note the don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't look for advice from. I mean, that I'm keeping that one nugget. And yeah, seek out the folks that you know will support you, and we are out there. And I know, speaking for myself, if you can find me on social media at Mary the Chief. I think if quickly, anyone here, if you do have a social media account or something that anyone watching can follow, we'll just go through our same order. Erin, if you want to start.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Erin Mac, DRERINMAC. Easiest place to find me.
Mine is private, but you can definitely add me. We are EJZ_Lakers. So that's for my husband and my daughter and I, Laker fans. So on Instagram.
One of your fun hobbies. There you go.
My photos, but yes, I'm a huge Laker fan.
And LaShana?
I am on Instagram at Pachipapa, PACHIPAPA, because I had a rabbit. His name was Pachi. So I named my Instagram after him. I didn't think I would ever use it for anything, but you're free to follow me. It'll be lots of pictures of house rabbits. So just be fairly warned on that.
That's the content I want and need.
And mine is just about outreach, space, probably professional development. I'm CSID Soar on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all the above. So SEESYDSOAR.
Wonderful. And I am also going to do a small plug to an app that I actually co-created, and along with Juvie Productions, Viola Davis's incredible production company, which you should also be following on Instagram. They're championing exactly everything that this foundation is all about: representation across the board. But it is based off of Shakespeare's Othello, my reinterpretation of Iago, our notorious villain, but as a woman, and talking about microaggressions. That's a huge theme. It's a fun app that we, in collaboration with Verizon, to promote their 5G network. It's a 3.5-minute operetta, me singing a rock song based off of Shakespeare's actual text, transformed into lyrics. Dealing again with why Iago, as a modern woman in the military, might be a little pissed off. Sorry, I shouldn't have used that term, but might be a little angry. Might be a green-eyed monster. It's called Iago the Green-Eyed Monster. You can find it on the App Store for Apple and Android, and you can visit our website at Green-Eyed Monster AR, because it's an augmented reality app, .com. And and there's lots of conversations around that about, again, microaggressions and all the things women come up against in our modern world. And then finally, I did also want to celebrate Dr. Erin Macdonald's space-time production. She started a production company a year and a half ago. Yeah. And my partner, Maddie, and I were fortunate enough to collaborate with her on the first project that she produced. I also served as producer, and we did a short film called Every Morning that Maddie Goff, my partner, wrote. And then again, we all produced together. Erin is an incredible producer. No surprise to anyone here, I'm sure. She keeps us in line. She got a short film, which is no easy feat, to be completed in less than a year. And anyone who's tried to make a short film can testify that that is incredible, and assembled an amazing team. We boast over 50% women non-binary crew. We got a Parity in Action badge from Women in Media, among a few other lovely accolades. And Erin, if you just wanted to speak to, I know you have your new project, Identities, written and directed by Jessie Gender.
Thank you. No, really briefly. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think for me, it's all about that representation that has been the theme for the whole thing. And while, I continue to work in the entertainment industry, learning to produce, but giving opportunities for people behind the scenes to be able to get their stories told. So we're really committed to sharing stories in the LGBTQ space in sci-fi, which I think is really underrepresented. So the Every Morning is out to festivals now, and then Identities is going to be a Nebula original, so people can look it up on the Nebula streaming service. Identities is about exploring gender identity in a corporate virtual environment that is forcing you into binary systems. So check it out, stay tuned, and I just want to thank you, Mary and Marion, and everyone here for giving us the opportunity to have this conversation. It's been really wonderful.
Absolutely. And once again, encouraging everyone to please donate to Nichelle Nichols Foundation. As you can see on your screens right now, go right to that link. NichelleNichols.foundation, pretty straightforward. But please donate and help send these young girls to space camp, and obviously support everything that this foundation is going to continue to do. And I'm so thrilled to know that this is one of many upcoming panels that will be happening this year and in the future. And I'm just so grateful that I got to be, look, there's the next generation right there. Yay. I feel like that's the perfect button.
It's my daughter's.
Oh my gosh, wonderful. Truly, I don't think there's a better way to end this than saying thank you all. Again, in Klingon, we would say katlo. And I certainly know that Chancellor L'Rell would have loved to have met all of these women. It would have been great to have a little bit more of that in her life as she tried to run the empire. So thank you all so much. Marion, is there any closing statement you would like to say?
I just want to thank you for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. This was just terrific, and it was wonderful for me to hear all of your stories. Thank you so very much for loving my Nichelle and joining us and helping to make these series a success. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And please, everyone, donate. We are trying to do some wonderful things through Nichelle's foundation. That's NichelleNichols.foundation. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.